I'd never seen anything like it. Like I say, I've taken a million pictures in my lifetime, and I love the sky, but I've never seen anything that comes close.
Anyone who lives in southern Wyoming has had more experience with Interstate 80 than they want to. It's the lifeline that takes people to and from Walmarts and Home Depots, to two of Wyoming's colleges, to sporting events, and occasionally to one of Wyoming's two capitals, also known as Denver and Salt Lake City. Anyone who's traveled Interstate 80 in the winter has war stories of just how dangerous and frightening it can be. Today we talk with someone who had an unforgettable experience on Interstate 80, but of the less common kind. Olen House starts his story on Interstate 80 just east of the Bridger Valley of Wyoming, between Evanston and Green River.
It was on February 5th in 2020. I was going over to Rock Springs to pick up some material for a job I was working on, and so there wasn't much traffic out there. Well, I got up to Church Butte, and as I got up there, it was early in the morning, I could see a sundog off in the sky off to the east.
Sundogs are patches of light, often curved, that appear off to the side of the sun when its rays are refracted by ice crystals. A link to a better explanation is in the description.
I've always been a photo nut, and I've always been a lover of the sky. I've got more pictures of the sky than you can imagine just because I love it. I looked over at the sundog again, and off to the right of it was this big white spot. I called it a white tornado because it has that tornado kind of a shape to it. But it was really bright, really white. So as I'm going down the interstate, I'm watching it. So I just grabbed my phone and I just rolled the window down on the passenger side and pulled over there and snapped that picture right out the side window. I took another photo of it, and this was getting bigger. This thing was so bright that in all these photos, the reflection on the snow in the parking lot where I had pulled in to stop, it's just hard to imagine anything could reflect that bright just off of the pavement and off of the snow. I didn't know what I was seeing. I had no clue even what I was seeing. It was so out of the ordinary, a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And as I could see this almost growing and taking another shape, extend clear down to the ground, I can't say I really felt afraid. I think probably to myself, I thought, oh Lord, what am I seeing? Something that made me feel so warm inside, even out there on that freezing morning.
What you see in the picture appears to be a figure made of light with an outline of its head and shoulders very high off the ground, possibly wearing a robe. My family has known Olen for over 30 years. He even helped build the house my parents live in now. He is not a Photoshop wizard or especially tech savvy.
At 8:16 that morning, when I first took that first picture, and then the last picture I took was at 8:31. So it wasn't like it was a quick snap, 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 and have it over with type thing. It lasted for a good while. I've heard this thing, you can't photograph a ghost. Well, I knew this wasn't a ghost, but each time I would snap a picture, I looked at my phone and checked to make sure that I had caught that picture, because I wasn't sure if it was going to be there or not. I did not know. Of course, we got that good old Wyoming wind blowing, and must have been doing one of those 40-mile-an-hour good hard blows that morning. Sure, the truck was moving in the wind. Well, this figure, as you'll see in there, had this large aura all around it. Even in that strong wind, that aura never moved. Well, I'm so moved by what I was seeing. There were people coming down I-80, and as they were coming down, I'm pointing. I'm trying to get folks to look over to see it, and no one's even looking. And a semi came in. When he pulled in, he had the nose of his semi facing right towards this figure, and I mean, his windshield was pointing right at it. Now, this young man gets out. He stretches and he walks around and dumped the tires on his truck. Never looked over there. Got back in his truck and left. You know, I've been asked that a lot. They said, do you ever think you were the only one to get to see it? And I said, I don't know. Unless someone else comes along with some photos or something that way.
I asked Olen how big what he saw was, and he references some storage tanks and some of the other photos that he took.
In the pictures, you will see there's the tanks that they use around these oil sight rigs. Well, those tanks are 20 feet high, I was glad it was there to have for a comparison. So for that tank to be 20 feet and come up this high, I would guess maybe a couple 100 feet high. As time went on and this started to go up, it started to go straight back up again. But then after that, as it went up and those clouds behind it, and it made a view there that looked so similar to a cross. I was pretty shaky that morning, and I have a daughter in Green River and one in Rock Springs, and boy, I couldn't wait to get over there to show them these pictures.
Olen's daughters weren't the only ones to see the photos on his phone that day.
I was in Green River and Rock Springs. There was a couple fellows there. One fellow was in his 70s, another in his 80s. And while I still had these photos just on my phone, I showed it to those fellows, and it made these men cry. Well, when I saw tears coming from fellows like this that have been around and seen a million things in a lifetime, and to have something like this move them that much, I just felt like I wanted to do something more with it.
The result of Olen wanting to share what happened to him is a 17-page full-color booklet containing the pictures he shot that day. Several hundred copies have been printed so far, and have even been shared as far away as the Philippines.
This has been quite the little adventure for me to get to share this with so many people and see how it touches so many folks. I had a lady that has a spot in her house. She's Catholic. She has a spot where she keeps in her bedroom. She has her table with the holy water and the picture, this booklet. And she sent me a picture of that and shared that with me. I've had some say it looked like a rocket taken off. I've seen some that just said aliens. I talked to a lady and her husband worked for one of the gas companies. He worked out in the gas fields. And she said, well, we saw a thing like that one time. We had a leak in a gas line, and it was in the winter, and we saw white coming up out of the ground like that. And I said, well, this is a little different ballgame because this didn't come from the bottom up. This came from the top down. And I even had one, and I put it in the back of the book. His quote was, that's the damn government doing that. And I can't believe that I know sometimes I wonder where our tax dollars go, but even at that, I don't think the government's going to waste money to put this out in the middle of nowhere for one man to photograph. So as far as my faith or anything that way, I'm not any one denomination. Guess you might say I'm a variety pack that way. I had a fella I know over in Rock Springs and showed him to him, and boy, he said, that's spooky. And I told him, I said, maybe if that's spooky to you, you might want to change your way of doing things. So,
if you're like me, you want to believe that Olen did have some sort of divine manifestation. However, what he shares next makes me start to wonder if maybe it was just a natural phenomenon.
I thought, come February 5th, I'm going back out there again. That same time of the morning, 1 year later, that sundog was there. I start looking, there's white. I thought it was going to turn into another white tornado. It's got that same bright white over there again on the same day. And I took another series of photos, and I'd captured them in the same areas. But when I got over to that parking area, it didn't materialize like what's in the book. But it is just as white, just as bright. But it's more of a sphere than it is a figure like this.
If what Olen House saw was just a natural phenomenon, it would make sense that it might be able to repeat itself at the same spot with the same conditions, or at least come close to doing the same thing again. However, the question still needs to be asked why no one else stopped or made a fuss. Wyoming is a state where really commonplace things like moose and deer are photographed relentlessly by locals and travelers. Why wouldn't someone on the interstate have stopped and pulled over to take a picture of what Olen did? Also, if what Olen saw was simply caused by the way the sun caught light crystals in the air, why wouldn't the crystals move with the 40-mile-per-hour wind and cause the aura that he saw around the light that he took photos of to move as well? Whether what Olen saw was a natural phenomenon or not, he believes it's still important and tells me the following story set in the bakery of the tiny grocery store where he lives during a bread shortage that happened during COVID.
One day, and one of the ladies was pushing a rack full of bread. And she was going past me, and I told her, I said, "Oh my gosh, you look like you're whipped." And she goes, "We're going 24/7 to try to keep enough bread." And at that time, I still just had the pictures on my phone. And so I pulled out the phone and I said, "I've got something here I'll show you. I'll share this with you." And I said, "This will make your day." Well, I pulled those out and I went through the series of photos. It's in the book here. And I went through those step by step, told her what I was seeing. Oh my gosh, she's standing there leaning on the bread rack, crying in the grocery store. And different face. See so many different things. It doesn't matter if they're Catholic folks or Methodist, LDS, anybody. People are seeing something here that moves them. And let's face it, 2020 was not a good year for any of us.
For those that believe faith and hope should come from God alone, what if Olen had taken a picture of an amazing sunset? Or the ocean when it glows with bioluminescent algae? Or some sort of other uncommon natural phenomenon that, according to your beliefs, was made by God, and it made people stop and feel hope or peace or something bigger than themselves in a hard time? Would that still count?
There'll be folks that have explanations that, that make them happy with what they see and everything. I know what makes me happy with what I saw, and a lot of other folks. But I can guarantee you, come February 5th again, I know where I'll be at 8 in the morning.
I wanted to thank Olen House for being on the show today. Please look in the information I provided in the description below to see how you can contact Olen to get a copy of his booklet. And please, please subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. We'll have another episode ready for you Monday. Thanks.